Okay, so Pi News episode 57. So first up, I saw this story on Tom's Hardware, and I also saw it pop up on YouTube because I subscribed to Jeff Geerling. A great video, and Jeff's been working for over 2 years trying to get an external GPU working with a Raspberry Pi, and he has managed it. It's definitely worth watching the video to see what does and doesn't work, and obviously how far this could go. But yeah, the dedication, the amount of work he puts into this is excellent. And yeah, it was a really enjoyable video to watch. So I'll put a link to that in the description. And I won't play the video, but if we just flick through, the amount of different graphics cards that he uses is huge. Oh, he's got an M.2 graphics card, all sorts of things. But he does get it to work. And he also gets it to report the graphics card in NeoFetch. So you can see from this screenshot, GPU AMD ATI Radeon HD 5000/6000 is up and running on a 4 gig compute module 4. Great work, I look forward to more progress on that project. Next up, this is just a great looking project, really nicely finished. So Pi 4B and portable projector unit running emulation station. And if you have a look down, it's made mostly in walnut. So let's have a skip through the pictures. It just looks so cool. And it looks like an old piece of kit, which is really admirable. You can see there's it looks like a touch control system on the top there for the projector, I guess. There's some controllers there, some gamepads for emulation station, some bananas. And here it is up and running. You can see it projected on the wall there. Yeah, really impressive. This one for my brother, 10 and 5mm walnut with maple and some Indian rosewood, hand tools and a cordless drill for the woodworking. Tried something new with the dovetails on this one. Inside there's a Pi 4B running emulation station, a small amp and speakers, a small projector, which I'm very impressed with, and a 4-cell 18650 lithium battery board. Yet to see how long it will power the full unit for, but seems to be easily good enough for a full movie. To think that this is properly portable, so you could take this camping or out and about, yeah, really nice. Next up, I built an interchangeable lens camera with a Pi Zero. This is on Reddit, and I'll just flick through. You can see it spinning around. You can see the little camera sensor in there, but it actually takes separate lenses for different purposes. And if you have a look at the YouTube video, this is their so Volzo's YouTube channel, and it's this video here. Really nicely made video, loads and loads of detail in there. And oh, I better pause it. But you can see that's, I think, the autofocus lens. So part of it being made out of wood, but also part of it being made with a 3D printer as well. I'll put a link in the description, so I won't play all the video, but let's go near the end. Oh yeah, so the lenses here, different lenses he's using for different effects and things. And you can see it's got this sort of blurry effect. One of these, I think it was a security camera, I think he mentioned on that. But you can see here the two models side by side looking very impressive. Yeah, really nice project. And I'm receiving one of the 64 megapixel cameras soon. So I'll be looking at doing something nowhere near similar to this, but testing out that camera. Speaking of the 64-bit camera, I can see on the Facebook page of Raspberry Pi and DIY projects, some people have already started to receive their samples, and there's already a video introducing the ArduCam Pi Hawkeye 64 megapixel camera for Raspberry Pi. Now this is an old one. This is actually one of Keo Deakin's. He does a lot of the retro gaming side on the Raspberry Pi. And he's got a Raspberry Pi, I think it's a 3, yeah, Raspberry Pi 3. You can see it's in water. And as it says from the description, this video is about waterproofing a Raspberry Pi 3B using Corrosion X and the dipping technique. But he's actually running it in water, so he's sealed it off. And it just came up on my Facebook feed, so you know the video is well 2018, so what's that, 4 years old now. But yeah, it was just something a little bit interesting. I do remember, I think I probably covered it in an older Pi News where it was a Raspberry Pi in a fish tank. So you can see this Pi is completely submerged. Now I think I remember from the video that it does actually, after a while the water warms up, so it's not the most effective way of cooling, but it just looks really cool. So this is mineral oil, so it doesn't conduct, and you can actually safely run it in there. I did think about doing it myself just out of interest, because it just looks ridiculous that you can put something in what looks like water and it still manages to function. Another one on Facebook, and this is a slimmed down Raspberry Pi, so going to build another handheld soon. slimmed down a 3B plus quite a bit by removing the GPIO pins, USB ports and Ethernet, and added 2 single ports for immediate setup, like adding ROMs and assigning buttons for hotkey. So if I zoom into it, you can see how, well, this was a normal Pi 3B, and this is the slimmed down. So the GPIO pins have all been taken out. There's only 2 USB sockets instead of the 4 there. Obviously they've got rid of the Ethernet because that's pretty much the biggest part on there. But yeah, a bit of dedication there. And the other picture was, that's a good picture because it shows the profile of both of them together. And yeah, it's going to make for a much slimmer handheld. And also from Facebook, this came up in my feed today. I have a Pi 3 based dashboard for my car and ordered a Pi 4 to replace the Pi 3 to improve boot times. The Pi 3 is just passively cooled, but I'm not sure for the Pi 4 what to do. This copper plate looks nice, but what are your experience with the Pi 4 and passive cooling? So yeah, looks really nice. Copper plate, and if you scroll down, there are links to it here somewhere. Here's the link for AliExpress, and what it looks like $7. I don't know how effective it will be. Obviously, copper is a very good cooler, but it is very thin. And someone have made, yeah, you've got different thickness here, like 2mm, 3mm, 4mm and 5mm. So if I click on the 5mm, 1456, doesn't actually change the picture. Does it change the picture? No, it doesn't change the picture. But oh yeah, and there's some fans here as well. Some fans, I'm not sure how much they'll benefit from the copper being around the fans, but then if it is part of the heatsink, I suppose. But yeah, it just looks really nice. And not a bad price, really. Oh, there's a fan on top of the heatsink in that one as well. Not sure if you need both of them. Next up from Tom's Hardware, Raspberry Pi 4 powers Chonky Palmtop Cyberdeck. And it looks cool when you look at it like this, but when you see it in the video and how it opens up, it is very nice. So you can see it starts off as a closed device. So like a very, very chunky laptop with lots of cables, it looks like, inside. But then when you open it up, and then you can fold out the keyboard. Now I won't show any more of the video because I'll put a link in the description, but yeah, it just looks really, really cool. Really nice work. Another portable device, so Pi Boy XRS retro handheld based on the Raspberry Pi 4 Model B. Arrives in the US for $149. $149 without a Pi 4 though, so you have to get hold of a Pi 4 to be able to use this. But yeah, it's a nice looking piece of kit. I like the design of it. You can see the USB sockets and the Ethernet are all accessible as well. Looks like USB-C charging there, 3.5mm jack for your headphones. Very smart looking. Next up, I had an email from Aaron Fate. I love your channel and I keep following your Pi covers. Can you mention my project as well? And he sent me a YouTube link. So Atari 2600 was the second computer, well, not computer, second games console that I ever had, me and my brother. And we loved playing it, and the tanks game was great, the driving game was great, but this is using your hands as motion control, so I won't show the video, but you can see there is an Atari 2600. So there's the interface it's using with the Pi in the left controller socket, and we've got a Microsoft camera that looks like on the front there, and probably a 7-inch screen running Raspberry Pi OS, and there's details about the code in there, so you can define the controls in here, so left and right, and it looks pretty responsive actually. Something very unusual, but definitely worth mentioning. And here you can see it on a large screen TV, playing tanks, or it's combat it was called, and there's a list of the components and everything there as well. Yeah, very good work. And I've covered this before, this handheld, but it's had another upgrade, so you can see it's got an aluminium heatsink on the bottom of it, and it's this one that uses PlayStation controller and a touchscreen, and just, yeah, really nice. Check out the last, I think it was the last Pi News, where I had the previous updates to this, but yeah, coming along nicely. And I still love my 3D printing. This is an air duct design for an aluminium case, and you can see if I scroll through, various different pictures there of how it all comes together, and there is the printed article. So it's scooping up all the hot air and pushing it out through the fan. Always like the nice close-up shots. Now the last thing I wanted to cover was a comment from T.B Martin, and this is about improving YouTube. In fact, I missed the previous comment. I'm not sure what happened. Sometimes YouTube deletes comments and I don't get to see them. Recently picked up a Pi 400 with Raspberry Pi OS on an SD card. I used an overclock of 2.3 on the CPU with the 750 overclock of the GPU, and saw it was still a bit slow. Found out that even when using Raspberry Pi OS on a 400 or a Pi 4 8GB, it still sets up the page file. So even on a Pi 4B with 8 gig, anything that uses RAM goes to the page file first and not the RAM. I disabled the page file with this command, and I'll copy this command. I then loaded up the 4K demo on YouTube using the latest Chromium, played it at 1080p, and to my surprise I only dropped 7 frames at the beginning of the video. Played another video and it dropped about 7 to 9 frames at the beginning, and that was it. Tried with Twister OS, but it kept crashing for some reason that I have not figured out yet. But on Raspberry Pi OS I can repeat the same test and get the same results. So I'm going to try it on KDE and see if it works on that, because it is my operating system of choice. So I've copied that. Let's play a video first. So I need to turn on Stats for Nerds. So you need to kind of click away and then click back to a video for Stats for Nerds to give you the accurate bit. So what are we on at the moment? 720. Let's go for 1080. And let's click on a video and then click back to this video and then it will refresh. So let's see what we get. Nothing yet. 7, 9, 10. 10 frames dropped. Actually, that, to be fair, that wasn't very much that's dropped. Let's go into another video and see what it does. This will also be at 1080. So starting off at 720, 0 frames dropped. 6. Yeah, 6 frames dropped. I do get good performance on this KDE. So I kind of don't need to do it on this. I need to do it on another version of Raspberry Pi OS, because I'm not actually getting the issue. So I think I'm going to close this down and boot up in Raspberry Pi OS. So let's write a fresh copy of Raspberry Pi OS 64-bit to my 64 gig Samsung bar. And I'm doing that with Raspberry Pi Imager at the moment. And my RGCam 64 megapixel camera has arrived, but that'll have to be for another video. Okay, so this is a fresh install of Raspberry Pi OS 64-bit. I've done nothing to it, so all I've done is installed NeoFetch, so I can show you that it's running at 1.8 gigahertz, and the desktop's running at 1080. Let's just do config.txt just to show that there's nothing in the overclocking section in that. There's only the normal bits that Bullseye adds on its own. So let's close that down and go to the browser, and let's just start trying to play this video again. Let's go straight to full screen. Trouble is, you can't get it to start off, like automate it to start at that resolution. There you go. So it's at 1080, and you can see 26 frames dropped. It's very choppy. Might have sorted itself out now. No, it's still dropping. Like 87, 91, 95. Yeah, so it's struggling. So let's pause that and let's copy this code over. I've just put it on my NAS drive because I haven't got my email account on this or anything. So network, and I've got a load of Pi stuff in here. I think it's under commands. Yeah, page file disable. So this is the text that was suggested. So let's copy that. And I worked out if you change disable to enable, it seems to reverse it. So if you don't want to keep these settings, it looks like you can go back to it. It seemed to work that way. Right, so let's close that down. And this one, open up a terminal. And let's paste that in and hit return. And you can see synchronizing state, executing, disable swap file, removed swap file service. So let's go back into this. Okay, let's reboot just in case. And let's go back in. And I should be able to restore the page. Yeah. So what's it going to do? How quick is it going to start up? Let's go straight to full screen. Okay, for some reason I can't get a full screen. I think that might be a Chromium issue. So let's close this tab. Okay, so let's refresh that tab and try and go to full screen. It did seem to start quicker. Yeah, I would say that started quicker. For some reason it's not letting me go into full screen. I think we're going to have to close Chromium. It's doing something weird, look. Okay, let's go back into Chromium. And let's restore that tab. Get rid of this one. And see how fast it starts up. That probably was a bit faster actually. Obviously it's not full screen at the moment. If I go to full screen, oh, I'm getting some weird issue with full screen. Look. Is it doing it? Oh no, it's done it. So full screen took a while, but let's turn on Stats for Nerds and let's do F5 to refresh this and see what it does. Oh, refreshing it takes out a full screen, doesn't it? Is it Alt Enter for full screen? No, that must be a Windows thing. So let's go full screen. Oh, Chromium seems to behave a bit strangely in this. It's taking its time to go to full screen. So if I do F5 again, I guess it's probably going to do exactly the same thing, is it? Taking its time, thinking about it. Seems to be playing alright, but I'm losing all that stuff from the sides, from the right hand side. There's nothing there now, look. And that should be all filled in with all the other videos. I wonder if it's different if you've used it for a while. I think I'm going to have to sort of play around with this and test it. Actually, one thing I noticed, if I go to Stats for Nerds, this video is playing at 1080 and it's 30 FPS. And it was mentioned about trying by T.B Martin about trying it at 50 FPS. So let's have a look for a 50 FPS YouTube video. But I'm still definitely dropping frames. Mind you, I'm moving the mouse around, and we know that moving the mouse around when you're playing videos doesn't usually give good results. So let's try 1080 50 and see if that does something good. So is this going to be, looks like it's going to be a bit slow moving. I want something with a bit of movement in it. That looks like it's got a bit of movement in it. So 1080 50, full screen, turn on. It doesn't feel that fast to me at this stage. Stats for Nerds, 169 dropped. It is definitely doing 1080 50. Oh, and it just switched to 720 on its own. I don't know if you can override that, but obviously it feels that it's not fast enough to be able to cope with it, and so it switches out. So 1080 50, let's not touch anything and see. No frames drop, 76, 86. Yeah, it's not, I'm not getting those results, but I haven't done the overclock, so 2.3 gigahertz at 750. So let's see if that makes the difference. Let's go into config.txt. Let's change the ARM frequency to 2300. I'm trying to think what over voltage I use on that. I think it's about 14, and GPU underscore frequency equals 750. Right, so let's save those settings. So Control X and yes and enter and reboot. So we run NeoFetch again. We can see that it's reporting 2300. Seems stable at the moment, although I've only just started it. So let's open the browser. And restore those settings. So there's 1080 50 FPS. Close this down. Full screen. Still takes a long time switching into full screen. Yeah, it really takes a long time switching into full screen. Switch on Stats for Nerds. Let's just change that resolution to 1080 and see what we're dropping. 9 frames. 72. Yeah, I'm not getting the same results. So have a play around with it, see what you think. Obviously do all of this at your own risk, and maybe do it on a fresh operating system so you can change it back. But yeah, let me know what results you get on different operating systems. But in these tests, it doesn't seem to have worked for me when my KDE was running so well before. But that was at 1080/30. I've tended to stay away from 1080/60. Yeah, anyway, I hope all this helps. Thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe.